The champagne glass shattered against the marble floor as Adunni Bakare-Williams stood frozen in the doorway of what used to be their bedroom. Her husband Kunle was tangled in silk sheets with her own sister, Folake, their bodies moving in a rhythm that had once belonged to her marriage alone. Kunle. The scream tore from her throat like a wounded animal. What would you do if you walked in on this? Hit like if you've been betrayed, and comment below where you're watching from. Her husband's head snapped up, his dark eyes wide with shock, sweat glistening on his forehead. Folake scrambled to cover herself with the designer bedsheets Adunni had picked out for their 5th wedding anniversary just 3 months ago. Adunni, wait! Kunle stumbled out of bed, reaching for his boxer shorts while Folake cowered behind a pillow. In our bed? With my sister. Adunni's voice cracked as she backed toward the door. The Victoria Island penthouse that had been their sanctuary now felt like a prison of betrayal. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Legos sparkled in the evening light, oblivious to the domestic catastrophe unfolding 30 floors above. It's not what you think, Kunle said, his voice desperate as he approached her. His lean frame, once the source of her pride when other wives at the country club would steal envious glances, now repulsed her. Not what I think. Adunni laughed bitterly. I think my husband is sleeping with my sister in our marital bed while our children are at their grandmother's house. Folake finally found her voice, wrapping the sheet around herself like armor. Adunni, please let us explain. Explain. Adunni's eyes blazed as she focused on her younger sister. The same sister she'd helped through university, who'd lived in their guest room for 6 months while job hunting, who'd been maid of honor at her wedding. Explain how you've been stabbing me in the back while eating at my table. Kunle stepped between them, his hands raised in a gesture meant to calm. Adunni, I know this looks bad, but you have to understand. Understand what? That my marriage is a joke? That while I've been running charity galas and managing our household, you've been having an affair with my own blood? The sound of her wedding ring hitting the marble floor echoed through the room as she pulled it off her finger and threw it at his feet. The 3-carat diamond that had once symbolized their eternal love now lay like a fallen star among the champagne glass shards. I want you both out of my house. Now. Kunle's expression hardened, the mask of remorse slipping away to reveal something colder underneath. Your house? Adunni, let's be clear about something. This penthouse, the cars, the lifestyle you're so attached to, it's all mine. My company, my investments, my money. The words hit her like physical blows. Adunni staggered backward, her hand finding the doorframe for support. I built the empire that pays for your shopping sprees, your charity events, your designer clothes, Kunle continued, his voice gaining strength as hers weakened. You've been living off my generosity for 7 years. So before you start throwing ultimatums around, remember who really owns what. Folake emerged from behind the pillow, her own confidence returning as she watched her sister crumble. Adunni, maybe it's time you faced reality. Kunle hasn't been happy for years. He deserves someone who appreciates him. Someone like you? Adunni's voice was barely a whisper now. Someone like me, Folake confirmed, moving to stand beside Kunle. The sight of them together, her husband and her sister, united against her, nearly brought Adunni to her knees. Fine, Adunni said, straightening her spine with what little dignity remained. Keep each other. But this isn't over. Kunle laughed, the sound cruel and dismissive. What are you going to do, Adunni? You have no job, no skills, no money of your own. You're a pampered housewife who's about to learn what the real world feels like. As Adunni turned to leave, her legs trembling beneath her, she heard Folake giggle, the same sound that used to comfort her during their childhood storms in their family home in Acadia. Now it felt like nails on a chalkboard. In the hallway, she paused at the family portrait that had been taken just last Christmas. Kunle's arm around her waist, her hands on their twin daughters' shoulders, Temalola and Kahind, only 6 years old, their bright smiles innocent of the chaos about to destroy their family. The sound of the bedroom door slamming shut behind her echoed through the penthouse like a gunshot, sealing her fate. But as Adunni stood alone in the hallway of what had been her home, something shifted inside her chest. The initial shock and devastation began to crystallize into something harder, more dangerous. Her husband thought he knew everything about her. He thought she was just a decorative wife, dependent on his wealth and status. What Kunle didn't know, what nobody knew, was that Adunni Bakare had secrets of her own. Secrets that would make his precious empire look like pocket change. The betrayal burned in her chest as she walked toward the guest bedroom, where she would spend her last night in the penthouse. Tomorrow, the real battle would begin, and Kunle Williams was about to learn that underestimating his wife would be the costliest mistake of his life. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more gripping stories like this. What do you think happens next? Comment below. 3 months later, Adunni sat in the cramped one-bedroom apartment in Surulere that Kunle's lawyers had designated as her temporary accommodation during the divorce proceedings. The paint was peeling from the walls, the air conditioning unit coughed like an old man with pneumonia, and cockroaches treated the kitchen as their personal playground. The contrast couldn't have been starker. From a penthouse worth 200 million naira to this hole in the wall that probably cost less than her monthly shopping budget used to be. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. Adunni, your sister says you're being unreasonable about the divorce settlement. Can't you just accept Kunle's offer and move on? You're embarrassing the family. Even her own mother had chosen sides, swayed by Folake's version of events, where Adunni was painted as the bitter, vindictive ex-wife, refusing to accept reality. The isolation cut deeper than the financial hardship. A knock at the door interrupted her brooding. Through the peephole, she saw a young man in a delivery uniform holding an envelope. Mrs. Williams, I have a registered letter for you. Adunni's heart sank as she signed for the document. More legal papers from Kunle's team, no doubt. Another reminder of how little power she had in this fight. But as she opened the envelope, her breath caught in her throat. The letterhead belonged to Rothschild and Associates, the most exclusive private banking firm in Switzerland. A firm she hadn't heard from in over a decade. Dear Mrs. Adunni Bakare, the letter began, using her maiden name rather than her married name. We are pleased to inform you that the trust established by your late grandfather, Chief Adunni Bakare, has reached its maturity date as outlined in the original documentation signed in 2010. Adunni's hands trembled as she read further. Her grandfather, her mother's father who had died when she was 19, had been far wealthier than anyone in the family had known. What they had assumed was a modest inheritance had been growing, compounding, multiplying in secret accounts for over 15 years. The current value of the trust stands at $312 million, which will be released to you upon completion of the required verification procedures and your personal appearance at our Geneva offices. $312 million. Adunni read the number again, certain she had misunderstood. Her grandfather had owned palm oil plantations and cocoa farms, but she'd never imagined the extent of his wealth. The old man had been secretive about his business dealings, traveling frequently to Europe in his later years for what he'd called agricultural conferences. Now she understood. He hadn't been attending conferences. He'd been building a financial empire that would one day belong to his granddaughter. The letter explained that Chief Bakare had structured the trust specifically to mature after his granddaughter's 25th birthday, wanting to ensure she had lived enough life to handle such wealth responsibly. There had been one condition. The inheritance would only be activated if she faced significant personal adversity. Divorce, the letter noted, qualified as such adversity. Adunni laughed, a sound that started soft but grew until she was doubled over on her threadbare couch, tears streaming down her face. While Kunle was congratulating himself on leaving her penniless, while Folake was probably picking out furniture for the penthouse, while her own family whispered about her fall from grace, she was actually worth more than Kunle's entire business empire. Her phone rang. Kunle's name flashed on the screen. Hello, Kunle, she answered, her voice steadier than it had been in months. Adunni, we need to talk. My lawyers say you're still refusing the settlement offer. 5 million naira, the apartment, and shared custody. It's more than generous for someone in your position. My position? She asked, walking to the window that overlooked the bustling street below. Vendors sold everything from plantains to phone cards, their voices mixing with the honking of Danfo buses and the general chaos of Lagos life. You know what I mean. You have no income, no assets, no prospects. My offer takes care of you and gives you enough to start over somewhere else. Somewhere else. Let's be honest, Adunni. Your reputation in Lagos is finished. Everyone knows about our divorce, about why it happened. Maybe it's time for a fresh start in Abuja or Port Harcourt. The condescension in his voice made her grip the phone tighter. You want me to disappear. I want what's best for everyone, including our daughters. They need stability, not a bitter mother who can't accept that the marriage is over. And you think Folake provides that stability? A pause. Then, Folake and I are getting married next month. The girls need a mother figure who can give them the kind of life they deserve. The words should have devastated her, but instead, Adunni felt that cold determination spreading through her chest again. Next month? How romantic. I assume you're having the ceremony at the country club. The venue doesn't matter, Adunni. What matters is that you sign the papers and move on with your life. You're right, Kunle. It's time for me to move on. She looked at the Swiss banking letter in her hand. I'll be out of the country for a few weeks handling some personal business. Personal business? What personal business could you possibly have? I'm sure your lawyers will keep you informed of anything relevant to our case. Give my love to Folake. She hung up before he could respond, already mentally calculating the time difference between Lagos and Geneva. Her grandfather's trust required her physical presence to claim the inheritance, but first, she needed to make some calls. The kind of calls that would put certain plans in motion, plans that would ensure Kunle Williams learned the true cost of betraying the wrong woman. As the sun set over Lagos, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Adunni began making a list. At the top, she wrote, Swiss bank appointment. Below that, private investigators. And at the bottom, underlined twice, revenge. The cockroach in her kitchen scurried across the floor, but for the first time in months, Adunni didn't feel like the pest. She felt like the exterminator. Don't miss what happens next. Like and share if you're loving this story so far. The Swiss Alps gleamed like diamonds in the morning sun as Adunni's private jet descended toward Geneva. 2 weeks had passed since the letter arrived, and every day had brought new revelations about her grandfather's hidden empire. Chief Adunni Bakare hadn't just been a successful farmer. He'd been one of the most strategic commodity traders in West Africa, quietly building relationships with European distributors and investing the profits in everything from technology stocks to real estate developments. The trust documents revealed properties in London, New York, and Dubai that she now owned outright. Mr. Heinrich Rothschild himself met her at the bank's private entrance, his silver hair immaculately styled and his handshake firm despite his advanced age. Mrs. Bakare, you look remarkably like your grandfather, he said in accented English, as he led her through marble corridors that spoke of old money and older secrets. He would be very proud of the woman you've become. Did you know him well? Adunni asked, still adjusting to the surreal nature of the situation. For over 20 years. He was one of our most astute clients, and one of the most determined to protect his family's future. They paused before an oil painting of the Lagos harbor circa 1960. He often spoke of his granddaughter, who had the mind for business, but was born into a world that would try to convince her she was powerless. The words sent a chill through Adunni. It was as if her grandfather had foreseen everything, the marriage, the betrayal, the moment she would need this inheritance most. In the private conference room, Mr. Rothschild spread documents across the mahogany table like a general planning a campaign. Beyond the liquid assets, there are the business holdings. Your grandfather was particularly interested in technology investments. He owned significant stakes in several companies that have since become quite valuable. Adunni's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Your husband and sister were seen at the country club yesterday afternoon, very public with their affection. Thought you should know. A friend. She set the phone aside, focusing on Mr. Rothschild's explanation of quarterly dividends and investment portfolios, but another text came through. They're planning something big for the wedding. Word is they've invited everyone who matters in Lagos society. Mrs. Bakare? Mr. Rothschild had noticed her distraction. I'm sorry. Please continue. I was explaining the structure of the inheritance. Your grandfather was quite specific about how the funds could be accessed. While you now own everything outright, he included provisions for what he called strategic spending, should you ever need to defend yourself against those who might try to take advantage of your position. What kind of strategic spending? Mr. Rothschild's smile was almost paternal. Legal fees, private investigators, business acquisitions that might prove personally satisfying. Your grandfather was a man who believed in justice, Mrs. Bakare. He ensured you would have the resources to achieve it. As she signed the final documents, officially claiming her inheritance, Adunni felt a transformation taking place that went beyond the bank balance. She was no longer the abandoned wife begging for scraps. She was Adunni Bakare, granddaughter of a visionary businessman, heir to an empire. And very soon, she would be Kunle Williams' worst nightmare. Her phone rang. Kunle's number. Hello, she answered, watching as her new account balances populated on the bank's private terminal screen. Adunni, where are you? My lawyer says you missed your deposition yesterday. I told you I was traveling on personal business. Personal business that's more important than our custody arrangement? The court won't look kindly on this kind of irresponsible behavior. Irresponsible. The word would have wounded her weeks ago. Now it simply amused her. How are the wedding preparations going? She asked instead. A pause. That's not your concern anymore. Oh, but it is. I'm very interested in celebrating new beginnings. In fact, I might throw a little party of my own. Adunni, whatever you're thinking, don't. The settlement offer won't be on the table forever. Take the $5 million and move on. 5 million naira, roughly 12,000 US dollars, when she was now worth over 300 million. The absurdity of it made her smile. You know what, Kunle? You're absolutely right. It's time for new beginnings all around. She hung up and turned back to Mr. Rothschild. I need to make some purchases. Large ones. What did you have in mind? A hotel. Preferably one in Lagos with excellent event spaces. For business purposes? For personal satisfaction. Mr. Rothschild nodded approvingly. Your grandfather would definitely approve. He always said the best revenge was success, but the sweetest revenge was succeeding exactly where your enemies expected you to fail. As Adunni left the Swiss bank that afternoon, her purse contained new credit cards with limits higher than Kunle's annual revenue, and her mind contained a plan that would transform her from victim to victor. The broken woman who had discovered her husband's betrayal 3 months ago was gone forever. In her place stood someone far more dangerous, a woman with unlimited resources, unlimited motivation, and absolutely nothing left to lose. The real game was about to begin. If you're loving this story of revenge, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell for notifications. What do you think Adunni's planning? Comment below your predictions. The Lagos Marriott Hotel's presidential suite overlooked the same Victoria Island waterfront, where Kunle's penthouse stood like a glass monument to his arrogance. From her new vantage point, Adunni could see the building where she'd once been mistress, now occupied by her replacement. It had taken exactly 48 hours to purchase the hotel through a shell company registered in the Cayman Islands. The previous owners, facing mounting debts from the economic downturn, had practically thrown themselves at her feet when her lawyers made the cash offer. Mrs. Bakare, the private investigators you requested have arrived, announced Jake, her new personal assistant, a sharp young man from the University of Lagos who specialized in corporate security. 3 men entered the suite, led by a tall, lean figure with calculating eyes. Mrs. Bakare, I'm Detective Inspector Emeka Okafor, retired from the Nigerian police. These are my associates, Mr. Tunde Adebayo and Mr. James Akwu. Gentlemen, please sit. I have a proposition for you. She had researched each man carefully. Okafor had been forced into early retirement after refusing to cover up a corruption scandal involving a prominent businessman. Adebayo was a forensic accountant who specialized in unraveling complex financial crimes. Aku was a former military intelligence officer with connections throughout Lagos society. I want you to investigate my husband, soon-to-be ex-husband, Kunle Williams. Everything. His business dealings, his personal relationships, his financial transactions, his daily routines. I want to know what he eats for breakfast and what he dreams about at night. Okafor leaned forward. Ma'am, with respect, this sounds like you want surveillance for a divorce case. We typically charge 50,000 naira per day for that kind of work. I'll pay you 2 million naira up front, with a bonus of 5 million when you deliver results that satisfy me. The three men exchanged glances. 7 million naira was more than they'd make in 2 years of regular investigations. What kind of results are you expecting? Adebayo asked. The kind that would interest the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission. The kind that would concern the Federal Inland Revenue Service. The kind that would fascinate the Nigerian Stock Exchange Regulatory Board. Understanding dawned on their faces. This wasn't about a divorce settlement. This was about destroying a man's entire empire. Mrs. Bakare, Okafor said carefully, if we find evidence of criminal activity, we'll be obligated to report it to the authorities. I wouldn't have it any other way. After the investigators left with their hefty retainer, Adunni stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching Lagos pulse with life 30 floors below. Her phone buzzed with a call from her daughter Temalola. Mommy? Daddy says you went on vacation without telling us goodbye. The sound of her 6-year-old's voice nearly broke her resolve. I'm sorry, sweetheart. Mommy had some important business to handle. I'll be back very soon. Aunt Folake says you might not come back. She says you don't love us anymore. Rage filled Adunni's chest like molten steel. Using her children as weapons was a line she hadn't expected even Kunle to cross. Listen to me very carefully, Temalola. Mommy loves you and Kahind more than anything in the world. No matter what anyone tells you, that will never change. Do you understand? Yes, Mommy. But why can't you come home? Aunt Folake is sleeping in your bed now, and she moved all your pictures to the storage room. The casual cruelty of it, erasing her from her own home while her children watched, crystallized Adunni's determination. She had been trying to convince herself that revenge was about justice, about making Kunle pay for his betrayal. But this wasn't about her anymore. This was about her daughters, learning that their mother was not a woman who could be discarded and forgotten. Temalola, I need you to be my special helper. Can you do that? Yes, Mommy. I want you to listen carefully when the grown-ups talk. If you hear anything about Daddy's work or about money or about meetings, I want you to remember it and tell me when we talk on the phone. Can you do that for Mommy? It felt wrong using her child as a spy, but Kunle had started this game when he decided to poison her daughters against her. I can do that. It's like a secret mission. Exactly like a secret mission. But remember, it's our secret. Don't tell Daddy or Aunt Folake about our phone calls, okay? After hanging up, Adunni felt a moment of doubt. Was this the kind of person she wanted to become? Was revenge worth compromising her principles? Then she remembered the sound of Folake's laughter echoing from her marital bed, the contempt in Kunle's voice when he'd called her powerless, the casual way he'd dismissed 7 years of marriage, as if she'd been nothing more than expensive furniture. Her phone chimed with a text message from an unknown number. Check your email. You're going to want to see this. A friend who believes in justice. The attached photos made her blood run cold. Kunle and Folake at what appeared to be a fertility clinic, holding hands as they left the building. The timestamp showed yesterday's date. They weren't just getting married. They were planning to have children together, to create the family that Kunle had always claimed he wanted with her, but with her sister instead. Adunni set down her phone and walked to the sweets bar, pouring herself a generous glass of cognac, the same brand Kunle used to bring out for special occasions. As the amber liquid burned down her throat, she made a decision that would reshape the Lagos business landscape forever. Tomorrow, she would start buying up every piece of property surrounding Kunle's office building. She would acquire his biggest competitors. She would poach his most valuable employees. And when his world began crumbling around him, he would never see her hand in his destruction. The woman who had begged him not to leave her was gone. In her place stood someone much more dangerous, a billionaire with a broken heart and unlimited resources for revenge. Like and share if you can't wait to see what happens next. The real war is just beginning. The call came at 3 in the morning, jolting Adunni awake in her hotel suite. Chaik's voice was tight with urgency. "Ma'am, we have a problem. Mr. Williams just filed an emergency custody motion claiming you've abandoned your children and are mentally unstable. There's a hearing scheduled for this morning at 9. Adunni was on her feet immediately, her mind sharp despite the early hour. "What's his evidence?" "He's claiming your recent travel and failure to appear at depositions show erratic behavior. He's also—" Chaik hesitated. "Tell me." "He's claiming you've been calling your daughters and trying to turn them against him and your sister. He has recordings." The hotel room suddenly felt 20 degrees colder. Those phone calls where she'd asked Temalola to listen to adult conversations. Kunle had been monitoring them. "How long until the hearing?" 5 hours. "Get my lawyer on the phone. Now. And arrange a car to take me to court." As she showered and dressed, Adunni's mind raced through possibilities. Kunle was making his move early, trying to use the legal system to destroy her before she could strike back. But he'd made one critical error. He assumed she was still the same powerless woman he'd betrayed. At exactly 8:45 a.m., Adunni walked into the Lagos High Court wearing a Hermes suit that cost more than most people's annual salary and accompanied by senior advocate Bola Tinubu, one of Lagos' most feared family court lawyers, and a man whose retainer alone was 50 million naira. Kunle's jaw dropped when he saw her. Gone was the broken woman in second-hand clothes who had been living in Surulere. In her place stood someone who radiated quiet power and unlimited resources. "Your Honor," Kunle's lawyer began when the hearing commenced, "my client is deeply concerned about his children's welfare. Their mother has demonstrated increasingly erratic behavior since their separation, including prolonged unexplained absences and attempts to manipulate the children against their father." "I object, Your Honor," Tinubu interrupted smoothly. "My client has been attending to pressing business matters related to her recently inherited estate. If opposing counsel wishes to characterize responsible financial management as erratic behavior, perhaps he should examine his own client's conduct more closely." Judge Adebayo looked intrigued. "Inherited estate?" "Yes, Your Honor. Mrs. Bakare recently came into a substantial inheritance from her late grandfather's Swiss holdings. She has been in Europe finalizing the necessary banking arrangements." Kunle's face went pale. This was information he clearly hadn't expected. "Furthermore," Tinubu continued, "we have concerns about the environment these children are being exposed to in their father's home. We understand he has moved his sister-in-law into the marital residence, creating an inappropriate situation for impressionable young minds." "She's my fiancée now," Kunle protested. "We're providing a stable family environment." "A stable environment." Tinubu's voice carried just the right note of disdain. "Your Honor, we have evidence that Mr. Williams began his relationship with his wife's sister while still married, conducting their affair in the family home where the children resided." Judge Adebayo's expression hardened. Family courts took dim views of adultery, particularly when it involved such blatant betrayal of trust. "Mr. Williams," the judge said directly, "these are serious allegations. How do you respond?" Kunle's lawyer whispered frantically in his ear before responding. "Your Honor, what matters is the present situation, not past difficulties in the marriage." "On the contrary," Tinubu interjected, "character matters greatly in custody determinations. We would like to present evidence of Mr. Williams' pattern of deceptive behavior." "What evidence?" Kunle demanded, his composure finally cracking. Tinubu smiled. "Your Honor, I have here documentation showing that Mr. Williams has been systematically hiding assets from his wife during their marriage. Shell companies in the Cayman Islands, undisclosed real estate purchases, offshore accounts that should have been declared as marital property." The blood drained from Kunle's face. Those were details that only someone with serious investigative resources could have uncovered. "Where did you get this information?" Kunle's lawyer sputtered. Through legal and proper channels, as required by law, Tinyabu replied smoothly. The question is why your client felt the need to hide these assets from his wife and potentially from the tax authorities. Judge Adebayo was now fully engaged. Mr. Williams, these are serious accusations involving potential tax evasion and asset concealment. Do you have an explanation? Kunle looked like a man watching his world collapse in real time. Your Honor, those allegations are baseless. Are they? Tinyabu produced another folder. Because we also have documentation showing that your client has been systematically underreporting his income to avoid paying appropriate child support and alimony. The hearing that was supposed to be about Adunni's fitness as a mother had suddenly become about Kunle's fitness as a human being. Your Honor, Tinyabu concluded, we request that custody remain shared pending a full forensic accounting of Mr. Williams' financial affairs. We also request that the court order him to cease all attempts to alienate the children from their mother. Judge Adebayo nodded grimly. Mr. Williams, I'm granting Mrs. Bakare's immediate access to her children and ordering both parties to refrain from discussing court proceedings with the minors. Additionally, I'm ordering a complete financial disclosure from both parties within 30 days. As they filed out of the courtroom, Kunle grabbed Adunni's arm in the hallway. What the hell are you trying to do? She looked down at his hand on her arm, then met his eyes with a stare that could have frozen the Lagos Lagoon. I'm showing you what happens when you underestimate me. You can't seriously think you're going to destroy me over our marriage ending. Oh, Kunle, Adunni said softly, pulling her arm free. I'm not trying to destroy you over our marriage ending. I'm going to destroy you for thinking you could erase me and get away with it. As she walked away, her heels clicking on the marble courthouse floor, Adunni could feel Kunle's stare burning into her back. The man who had once dismissed her as powerless was finally beginning to understand the magnitude of his mistake. But this was only the beginning. When she was done with him, losing custody would be the least of his problems. Don't forget to hit subscribe and turn on notifications. What do you think of Adunni's courtroom power move? Comment below. The private dining room at the Oriental Hotel buzzed with nervous energy as Lagos' most influential businessmen gathered for what they believed was a routine investors meeting. What they didn't know was that the mysterious A. Bakare Holdings that had requested their presence was about to reshape their understanding of power in the city. Adunni entered the room wearing a navy blue suit that whispered rather than shouted wealth, her presence immediately commanding attention despite her soft-spoken demeanor. Gentlemen, thank you for accepting my invitation. Chief Emeka Okonkwo, CEO of Lagos' largest construction company, squinted at her with confusion. I'm sorry, but we were told we'd be meeting with A. Bakare about potential investments. You are. I'm Adunni Bakare, formerly Williams. The room fell silent. These men knew that name. It had been whispered in country club corners and boardroom conversations ever since news of her contentious divorce began spreading through Lagos society. Mrs. Bakare, said Alhaji Musa Dentata, owner of the city's premier shipping company, his voice careful. What exactly is the nature of this meeting? Adunni smiled, taking her seat at the head of the polished mahogany table. I'm here to offer you the opportunity of a lifetime. I'm launching a new venture capital fund focused on Lagos infrastructure development, and I'd like you to be my first partners. Chief Adebayo Ogundimu, whose media empire included 3 television stations and Lagos' most influential newspaper, leaned forward. With respect, Mrs. Bakare, venture capital requires significant initial investment. Given your current circumstances, my current circumstances include liquid assets worth over $300 million, plus property holdings across 3 continents. She let that sink in before continuing. But I'm not here just to offer you money. I'm here to offer you protection. The word hung in the air like smoke from expensive cigars. Protection from what? Okonkwo asked. From Kunle Williams. Another silence, this one heavier with implication. Gentlemen, I know about the Banana Island project, the one that's supposed to launch next month with Williams Construction as the primary contractor. Adunni opened a leather portfolio and spread photographs across the table. I also know about the substandard materials being used, the bribes paid to inspectors, and the corners being cut that will make those buildings death traps within 5 years. Chief Okonkwo's face went ashen. Where did you get these? The same place I got these. She produced another set of documents. Mr. Dentata, your shipping manifests show some interesting discrepancies. Items declared to customs don't quite match what actually enter the country, do they? Dentata's hands began to shake slightly. And Chief Ogundamu, your television stations have been remarkably kind to certain political candidates in exchange for exclusive government advertising contracts that technically violate federal media guidelines. The three men exchanged panic glances. This woman had dirt on everyone in the room. Mrs. Bakare, Ogundamu said carefully, what exactly do you want? Nothing criminal, I assure you. I simply want your partnership in my new venture. In exchange, you'll receive significant returns on your investment and protection from anyone who might try to use your past oversights against you. And if we refuse, Okonkwo asked, then you're free to take your chances with whatever storms might be coming. Adunni's smile was pleasant, but her eyes were arctic. Though I should mention that copies of all this documentation have been prepared for certain interested parties at the EFCC, FERS, and various international regulatory bodies. The threat was clear, but elegantly delivered. Partner with her willingly, or face the consequences of their past actions being exposed. How much of an investment are we talking about? Dentata asked, his business instincts overriding his fear. 50 million naira each, which I'll personally match with 200 million. Think of it as seed money for Lagos' most exclusive business consortium. The numbers made sense. Even if they suspected blackmail, the potential returns were astronomical. What about Williams? Chief Ogundamu asked. He has connections throughout the city. Political protection. Mr. Williams' protection is not as comprehensive as he believes. In fact, I'd say his political friends are about to become very interested in distancing themselves from certain business practices. Adunni's phone chimed with a text message. She glanced at it and smiled, the first genuine expression of pleasure she'd shown all afternoon. Gentlemen, I need to cut our meeting short. Something wonderful has just happened. She stood, smoothing her suit jacket. I'll have contracts drawn up by tomorrow. I trust you'll give my proposal the consideration it deserves. As she walked toward the door, Chief Okonkwo called out, Mrs. Bakare, what exactly is your endgame here? She paused, her hand on the door handle. My endgame is simple, gentlemen. I want my city to remember that underestimating a woman is the most expensive mistake a man can make. 20 minutes later, Adunni sat in the back of her Mercedes as it glided through Lagos traffic toward her hotel. The text message that had interrupted her meeting was from Detective Inspector Okafor. Package delivered. Check your email. This is bigger than we thought. The email contained a single photograph that made her heart race with vindication. Kunle Williams entering a private clinic with a briefcase, shaking hands with a man whose face was clearly visible in the security camera footage, Dr. Babatunde Ogundipe, currently under investigation by the Medical and Dental Council for selling falsified medical certificates. The timestamp showed the meeting had occurred 3 weeks ago, just days before Kunle's emergency custody hearing, where he'd claimed Adunni was mentally unstable. Chaik, she called to her assistant in the front seat. Schedule a meeting with my lawyer for tonight. And contact that journalist friend of yours at the Punch newspaper. I have a story that's going to be very interesting to the public. As her car pulled up to the Oriental Hotel, Adunni felt a familiar stirring of satisfaction. Kunle thought he was playing chess while she was playing checkers. He was about to learn that she'd been playing chess all along. She was just playing on a board he couldn't see. Her phone rang. Unknown number. Mrs. Bakare? This is Folake. The sound of her sister's voice still had the power to twist something painful in her chest, but Adunni kept her voice level. What do you want, Folake? I want to talk. Sister to sister. Can we meet? Sister to sister? Adunni laughed bitterly. I think you forfeited that relationship when you decided to sleep with my husband. Please, Adunni. There are things you need to know. Things about Kunle that you don't understand. I understand everything I need to understand. No, you don't. Folake's voice dropped to a whisper. He's not who you think he is. None of this happened the way you think it did. Meet me tomorrow at the Radisson Blu. 1 hour. If you still hate me afterward, I'll never contact you again. The line went dead before Adunni could respond. As she rode the elevator to her suite, a cold certainty settled in her stomach. Whatever Folake wanted to tell her wasn't going to be a simple apology. It was going to be something that would change everything she thought she knew about her marriage, her betrayal, and her carefully planned revenge. The war she thought she was fighting might be completely different from the war that was actually being waged. And if that was true, then everyone, including herself, might be in more danger than she'd realized. Share this story if revenge plots keep you on the edge of your seat. What do you think Folake wants to reveal? Drop your theories in the comments. The Radisson Blu's lobby cafe felt like neutral territory, public enough to prevent emotional outbursts, but private enough for sensitive conversations. Adunni arrived first, choosing a table near the window where she could watch Lagos traffic flow past like a river of metal and ambition. Folake appeared 20 minutes later, and Adunni was startled by her sister's appearance. The confident woman who had been flaunting her relationship with Kunle looked haggard, with dark circles under her eyes and a nervous energy that made her hands shake as she sat down. "Thank you for coming," Folake said quietly. "You have 1 hour. Talk." Folake glanced around nervously before leaning forward. "Kunle didn't seduce me, Adunni. It was a setup from the beginning." "A setup?" Adunni's voice was flat with disbelief. "You're going to blame Kunle for your decision to betray me? No, you're not understanding." Folake's whisper was urgent. "It was a setup designed to make you leave him. He planned the whole thing." The words hit Adunni like cold water. "What are you talking about?" "6 months ago, Kunle approached me. He said your marriage was over and he wanted out, but he couldn't afford the divorce settlement you'd be entitled to. He was in financial trouble, serious trouble, and couldn't risk you finding out about his debts." Adunni's carefully controlled composure began to crack. "You're lying. He offered me 5 million naira to seduce him publicly enough that you'd catch us and file for divorce on grounds of adultery. He said it would make you the guilty party and reduce his settlement obligations." The memory of that night, walking into her bedroom to find them together, replayed in Adunni's mind with sickening new context. "He planned for me to find you. The bedroom door was supposed to be locked. He timed it perfectly. He knew you'd be coming home from your mother's at exactly that time." Folake's eyes filled with tears. "I was supposed to seduce him, let you catch us, then disappear with my payment. But things got complicated." "Complicated how?" "I fell in love with him." Folake's voice broke. "I know how that sounds, but somewhere between playing the role and living it, I started believing he actually cared about me." Adunni felt dizzy. Everything she believed about her betrayal, the spontaneous passion, the inevitable attraction between her husband and sister, had been a calculated performance. "But now you're getting married," she said weakly. Folake laughed bitterly. "Are we?" 3 days ago, I found documents in his study, prenuptial agreements that would leave me with nothing if we divorce. Insurance policies that would pay him millions if I died accidentally. And these." She slid a folder across the table. Inside were photographs of Folake leaving various locations, her apartment, the grocery store, the salon, but the photos were taken with a telephoto lens from a considerable distance. "He's been having me followed for weeks. Documentation, he calls it. Evidence of my daily routine, my patterns, my habits." A chill ran through Adunni. "Evidence for what?" "I don't know. But yesterday, I overheard a phone conversation. He was talking to someone about cleaning up loose ends and making sure the sister can't cause problems later." The implications crashed over Adunni like a wave. If Kunle had orchestrated their entire affair, if he'd manipulated both sisters to achieve his own financial goals, then her revenge plot was based on a fundamental misunderstanding of the situation. "Folake, do you have somewhere safe you can go?" "Why would I need?" Understanding dawned on Folake's face. "You think he's planning to hurt me?" I think a man desperate enough to destroy his marriage through elaborately staged adultery might be desperate enough to do anything. Adunni's phone buzzed with an urgent message from Detective Inspector Okafor. Emergency. Kunle Williams' financial situation is worse than we thought. He's leveraged everything, including properties that don't legally belong to him. He's facing bankruptcy and potential criminal charges. We need to meet immediately. She looked up to find Folake staring at her with desperate hope. Adunni, I know I don't deserve your help after what I did, what I thought I was doing, but you're the only person I can trust. The sister who had betrayed her was also the sister who had been manipulated and used, just as Adunni herself had been. The enemy she'd been planning to destroy alongside Kunle was actually another victim of his schemes. Pack a bag, Adunni said decisively. Tonight. Don't tell anyone where you're going. Don't leave a note. Don't use your credit cards. Where should I go? The Eco Hotel. Suite 2847. It's registered under a corporate account that can't be traced to either of us. Adunni stood, her mind already racing through new calculations. And Folake? If anything happens to me, there's a safe deposit box at First Bank, Victoria Island. Box 847. The key is taped under the sink in the hotel suite bathroom. Everything you need to protect yourself is in that box. As she walked away, leaving her sister in the cafe, Adunni felt the strangest sensation, like she was walking out of one story and into a completely different one. The revenge plot she'd been orchestrating suddenly seemed dangerously naive. If Kunle was willing to manipulate his wife and sister-in-law to avoid a divorce settlement, if he was facing financial ruin and potential criminal charges, if he was already making plans to clean up loose ends, then the real question wasn't whether she could destroy him. The real question was whether he was planning to destroy her first. Her phone rang. Kunle's number. Hello, Adunni. I understand you had lunch with Folake today. The casual tone sent ice through her veins. He was having her followed too. It was enlightening, she said carefully. I'm sure it was. Listen, I think it's time we had a real conversation about our situation. Adult to adult. Why don't you come by the Penthouse tonight? Around 10. Every instinct screamed danger, but Adunni found herself saying, I'll be there. After she hung up, she realized she'd just agreed to meet a potentially dangerous man in a private location where he had complete control. But she also realized something else. This might be her only chance to understand exactly how deep Kunle's schemes went, and what he was really planning for the women who knew too much about his secrets. Like this story? Hit that subscribe button. Do you think Adunni is walking into a trap? Comment your thoughts below. At 9:47 p.m., Adunni stood in the marble lobby of the building that had once been her home, watching the night security guards face register confusion and then recognition. Mrs. Williams. Mrs. Bakare. Mr. Williams said you might be coming up. The elevator ride to the penthouse felt longer than usual, each floor bringing new waves of memory and dread. When the doors opened directly into the apartment, a luxury feature that had once made her feel like royalty, she was struck by how different everything looked. Her family photos had been replaced with modern art. The warm colors she'd chosen were gone, replaced by stark blacks and whites. Even the furniture had been rearranged to erase any trace of her presence. Adunni. Kunle emerged from what used to be their bedroom, wearing the navy blue robe she'd bought him for their anniversary. The casual intimacy of the gesture felt like a slap. Thank you for coming. Where are our daughters? Safely at your mother's for the night. This conversation requires privacy. He gestured toward the living room, but Adunni remained near the elevator, keeping her escape route clear. Folake told me some interesting things today, she said without preamble. Kunle's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind his eyes. Did she? And what sorts of things did dear Folake share? That our entire marriage ending was a performance. That you paid her to seduce you, so I'd file for divorce, and you could avoid paying a fair settlement. Now Kunle smiled, and the expression was colder than anything Adunni had seen from him during their 7-year marriage. Folake always did have an active imagination. Tell me, did she also mention that she came to me first? that she'd been trying to seduce me for months before I finally gave in. You're lying. Am I? Check your phone. Adunni's phone chimed with an incoming message. Audio file attached. Play it, Kunle said. Her fingers trembling, she pressed play. Folake's voice filled the penthouse. Kunle, Adunni doesn't appreciate you the way I do. She takes everything for granted. The money, the lifestyle, you. If you were my husband, I'd worship you every day. The recording continued with increasingly explicit suggestions and declarations of love. The timestamp showed it was from 8 months ago, 2 months before Folake claimed Kunle had approached her with his plan. She's been pursuing me since she moved into our guest room, Kunle said conversationally. I have recordings going back almost a year. Phone calls, voice messages, even videos she sent to my private email. Adunni felt the world shifting beneath her feet again. But she said what she needed to say to turn you against me. Classic manipulation, really. She seduces your husband, destroys your marriage, then plays the victim when things don't go as she planned. The audio file was still playing. Now she could hear Folake describing detailed fantasies about replacing Adunni, about raising their children as her own, about being the wife Kunle deserved. This doesn't make sense, Adunni whispered. If she was pursuing you, why did you give in? Why destroy our marriage? Kunle moved closer, his voice dropping to the intimate tone he'd once used during their happiest moments. Because I realized she was right about something. You did take everything for granted. Our marriage had become a business arrangement where you played the perfect wife and I played the provider, but there was no passion left. So you decided to humiliate me publicly rather than talk to me about it. I decided to give us both a chance at real happiness. He was close enough now that she could smell his cologne, the same scent that used to make her feel safe. But then something unexpected happened. What? I realized what I'd lost. His hand moved toward her face, but she stepped back. Adunni, these past months have shown me that you're not the woman I married. You're stronger, more resourceful, more fascinating than I ever gave you credit for. What are you talking about? The Swiss bank account, the hotel purchase, the way you handled the custody hearing, the business meetings with Lagos' most powerful men. Kunle's eyes gleamed with what looked like pride. You've become exactly the kind of woman I've always wanted. Understanding crashed over her like a tsunami. You know about the inheritance. I know about everything. And I want you back. The words that should have made her heart soar instead filled her with horror. You want me back? After everything you've done? Think about it logically. We're both adults. We both made mistakes. But together, with your new resources and my business connections, we could build an empire that would make us the most powerful couple in Lagos. What about Folake? Kunle shrugged, the gesture casual and terrifying. Folake served her purpose. But she's becoming problematic. Too emotional, too attached, too likely to cause trouble. I'm sure you understand. You're planning to get rid of her. I'm planning to move forward with the woman who should have been my partner all along. He moved closer again, and this time she let him. Adunni, I know you hate me right now, but hate and love are much closer than people think. That fire in your eyes when you're angry with me, that's more passion than we had in the last 3 years of our marriage. His fingers brushed her cheek, and for a moment, just a moment, muscle memory made her want to lean into the touch. What exactly are you proposing? She heard herself ask. Remarriage. A real partnership this time. We'll handle the Folake situation quietly and discreetly. File for an annulment of our divorce on grounds of fraud. Her fraud, not ours. And start fresh. And if I refuse? The mask slipped completely then, revealing something that made her blood freeze. Then you'll find out exactly how dangerous it can be to cross me when I'm desperate. Adunni looked into the eyes of the man she'd loved for 7 years and realized she was staring at a complete stranger, one who was capable of anything. I need time to think, she managed. Of course. But not too much time. Some situations have a way of resolving themselves if left unattended too long. As the elevator doors closed behind her, Adunni knew with absolute certainty that she was no longer planning a revenge scheme. She was fighting for her life, and possibly for Folake's as well. The man she'd married was gone, replaced by someone who saw people as chess pieces to be moved and discarded at will. And right now, both she and her sister were in mortal danger from a player who had been playing a much deeper game than either of them had realized. What's your theory about what happens next? Share this story and comment below. This is getting intense. The burner phone rang at 6:23 a.m., jolting Adunni from restless sleep in her hotel suite. Only 3 people had this number: her lawyer, Detective Inspector Okafor, and Folake. Adunni. Folake's voice was barely a whisper, thick with tears. Something terrible has happened. Where are you? Are you safe? I'm at Lagos University Teaching Hospital. There's been an accident. The words sent ice through Adunni's veins. What kind of accident? Gas leak in my apartment. The explosion happened around midnight. If I hadn't been staying at the hotel like you told me to, I'd be dead right now. Adunni was already reaching for her clothes. I'm coming to get you. No, don't come here. He'll be watching the hospital. I managed to sneak out through the service entrance, but there were men asking questions about me at the front desk. 20 minutes later, they met in the parking garage of the Palm Shopping Mall in Lekki, a location busy enough to provide cover, but public enough to discourage violence. Folake looked like she'd aged 10 years overnight. The fire department says it was a gas leak, but I know it wasn't, Folake said as they sat in Adunni's Mercedes. I had the gas lines inspected 2 months ago when I first smelled something funny. Everything was perfect. Did you tell the investigators? I tried, but suddenly there are no records of any recent inspection. The company claims they've never been to my apartment. Adunni felt the familiar chill of recognition. Kunle's connections ran deep in Lagos, deep enough to erase paper trails and buy official silence. There's more, Folake continued. This morning I got a call from Kunle. He sounded genuinely concerned, asked if I was hurt, offered to pay for medical treatment. Performance, Adunni said grimly, establishing his alibi as the caring fiancé. That's what I thought too. But then he said something that made my blood run cold. He said, I'm so glad you're safe. It would have been terrible if both sisters had accidents so close together. Both sisters. Adunni's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Folake, I need to tell you what happened last night. She recounted her meeting with Kunle, his marriage proposal, and his casual discussion of handling the Folake situation. When she finished, Folake was staring at her in horror. He wants to kill us both. I think he wants to kill you and remarry me. At least until he figures out how to access my inheritance legally. Then, Adunni didn't need to finish the sentence. Her phone buzzed with a text from Chike. Emergency meeting. Inspector Okafor says it's life or death. 1 hour. They met at the inspector's office in Ikeja, a small private security firm housed in a building that had seen better decades. Okafor's usually calm demeanor was replaced by grim urgency. Ladies, we have a problem bigger than we initially understood. Mr. Williams isn't just facing bankruptcy. He's facing criminal charges that could put him away for 20 years. He spread documents across his desk like a tarot reading, predicting doom. The shell companies, the hidden assets, the tax evasion, that was just the beginning. He's been running a sophisticated money laundering operation for politicians and drug traffickers for at least 5 years. Adunni studied the papers. How much money? Conservative estimate? Over 2 billion naira has moved through his accounts in ways that can't be legally explained. So he needs to disappear, Folake said quietly. Or eliminate the evidence, Okafor corrected, which includes anyone who might know enough to testify against him. But we don't know anything about money laundering, Adunni protested. You know about the offshore accounts. You know about the shell companies. You've seen documentation that proves the existence of hidden assets. Okafor's expression was grave. In a criminal investigation, that makes you material witnesses. And material witnesses who can't be controlled become liabilities, Folake finished. There's more. We've been monitoring his communications since yesterday. He's been in contact with some very dangerous people, the kind who specialize in making problems disappear permanently. Adunni felt the walls closing in. What are our options? Option 1. You both disappear. New identities, new lives. Somewhere Kunle Williams can never find you. What about my children? Adunni's voice broke. I can't abandon Temalola and Kahind. Option 2. We go to the authorities with everything we have and put you both in protective custody while they build a case against Williams. How long would that take? Folake asked. Months, maybe years. And there's no guarantee your testimony would be enough for a conviction, especially given his political connections. And option 3? Adunni asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to hear it. Okafor was quiet for a long moment. Option 3 is the most dangerous, but it might be the only way to ensure your permanent safety. Tell us. We turn the tables. Instead of waiting for him to move against you, we orchestrate a situation where he incriminates himself so thoroughly that his powerful friends have no choice but to abandon him. A setup, Folake said. A trap, Okafor corrected. Using you as bait. The idea should have terrified her, but instead, Adunni felt a familiar stirring of determination. Running would mean losing her children forever. Hiding in protective custody would mean living in fear indefinitely. But turning the tables? That felt like taking control. What did you have in mind? She asked. Okafor smiled grimly. Mr. Williams thinks he's been playing chess while you've been playing checkers. It's time to show him that you've been playing chess all along. You've just been playing on a board he can't see. As he began outlining his plan, Adunni realized that everything, the betrayal, the divorce, the inheritance, even the danger, had been leading to this moment. The final game where the stakes weren't money or pride or revenge. The stakes were survival itself. And she was done being anyone's victim. Keep watching to see how this dangerous game plays out. What would you do in Adunni's situation? Comment below. The Eco Hotel's presidential ballroom glittered with the cream of Lagos society. Their evening were catching the light from crystal chandeliers as they mingled over champagne and canopy. The occasion was the launch of Adunni's new philanthropic foundation, a $50 million initiative to support women's education across Nigeria. What the guests didn't know was that every conversation was being recorded, every corner was under surveillance, and the evening's hostess was wearing a wire. You look radiant tonight, Kunle murmured as he approached her near the orchestra. He'd arrived 30 minutes ago with Folake on his arm, playing the role of the supportive ex-husband, attending his former wife's charitable event. Thank you for coming, Adunni replied, her smile perfect for the cameras while her heart hammered against her ribs. Both of you. Folake looked genuinely nervous, which wasn't entirely acting. Despite knowing the plan, having assassins potentially targeting you made it difficult to completely relax. Adunni, this is quite impressive, Kunle said, gesturing at the crowd of politicians, business leaders, and international donors. Starting a foundation of this magnitude, it shows real vision. It shows real resources, corrected Chief Emeka Okonkwo, joining their conversation. $50 million is serious money, even by Lagos standards. Indeed, Kunle agreed. It makes me curious about the source of such wealth. Here it comes, Adunni thought. The moment they'd orchestrated this entire evening around. Well, she said loudly enough for nearby guests to overhear, I suppose there's no point in being secretive anymore. My late grandfather left me quite a substantial inheritance. Swiss banks, you know how they are about privacy. Swiss banks, Kunle repeated, his eyes sharpening. How interesting. I've always found Swiss banking arrangements to be very flexible when it comes to certain types of transactions. Several guests had paused their conversations, sensing undercurrents in what appeared to be casual chatter. What do you mean by that? Adunni asked innocently. Oh, just that Swiss accounts are perfect for international business dealings that require discretion. Currency exchanges, investment transfers, that sort of thing. Kunle's voice carried the confidence of a man who believed he was among friends. I've used similar arrangements myself for various business ventures. Business ventures? Chief Ogundamu had materialized beside them, his journalist instincts activated. What kind of business requires Swiss discretion? Kunle laughed, but there was an edge to it now. The profitable kind, my friend. In this economy, a smart businessman explores every available avenue for growth, including international partnerships. Adunni prompted. Especially international partnerships. Some of my associates prefer to keep their Nigerian investments private for tax purposes, both theirs and ours. A small crowd had gathered now, drawn by the intensity of the conversation and the presence of the city's most influential people. Tax purposes, repeated Alhaji Dentada, his voice carrying just the right note of curiosity. Are you talking about offshore arrangements? I'm talking about business reality, Kunle said, his confidence growing as he warmed to his audience. Every successful entrepreneur in Lagos has international connections. Mining interests from South Africa, oil money from Libya, pharmaceutical investments from Europe. Pharmaceutical investments? Folake spoke for the first time, her voice trembling slightly. Kunle, you never mentioned pharmaceutical investments. There's a lot I haven't mentioned, my dear. Kunle's voice carried a warning, but he was too caught up in displaying his sophistication to stop. The international pharmaceutical trade is extremely lucrative, especially when you understand the regulatory differences between countries. Detective Inspector Okafor, disguised as a waiter, moved closer with his serving tray, the hidden recording device capturing every word. Regulatory differences? Chief Okonkwo asked. That sounds complicated. It's simple, really. What's controlled in one country might be perfectly legal in another. A smart businessman helps facilitate the movement of products to markets where they're most appreciated. The crowd was completely silent now, everyone sensing they were witnessing something significant without understanding exactly what. Movement of products, Adunni repeated. Are we still talking about pharmaceuticals? Kunle's eyes glittered with the arrogance that had always been his weakness. We're talking about opportunity, Adunni. About understanding that in a globalized economy, artificial boundaries are just obstacles to be overcome. What kind of boundaries? She pressed. Legal boundaries, national boundaries, moral boundaries. His voice dropped to what he clearly intended as a seductive whisper, but the microphones picked up every word. When you control the flow of certain commodities between certain countries, you control more than just money. You control power. Commodities, Folake said faintly. Like what? Like whatever pays the bills and keeps us living the lifestyle we deserve. Kunle reached for Adunni's hand. But that's enough business talk for one evening. Adunni, I meant what I said last night. About us. About starting over. Starting over? The question came from behind them. They turned to find Commissioner of Police Ibrahim Musa, accompanied by 4 officers in civilian clothes. Mr. Kunle Williams, the commissioner asked politely. Yes. You're under arrest for money laundering, conspiracy to import controlled substances, and tax evasion. You have the right to remain silent. The ballroom erupted in chaos as Lagos elite realized they'd just witnessed a major arrest at what they thought was a charity gala. Cameras flashed, guests scattered, and security personnel moved to control the exits. But Kunle's eyes never left Adunni's face. You did this, he said quietly as the handcuffs clicked around his wrists. You set me up. No, Kunle, Adunni replied, her voice steady despite the turmoil around them. I gave you enough rope to hang yourself. You chose to braid it into a noose. This isn't over, he snarled as the officers began leading him away. I have powerful friends. I know things about people that could destroy. The people you're thinking of, Commissioner Musa interrupted pleasantly, have already distanced themselves from your activities. Turns out your powerful friends value their own freedom more than your friendship. As Kunle was led away, Folake grabbed Adunni's arm. Is it really over? The criminal investigation will take months, Adunni said, watching the ballroom slowly return to a semblance of order. But yes, it's over. He can't hurt us anymore. What about your children? Full custody was granted this afternoon. They're waiting for me at home. Adunni smiled, the first genuine smile she'd felt in months. Our real home. The one I bought yesterday with my grandfather's money. As the last of the police officers filed out and the guests slowly resumed their evening, now with far more animated conversation topics, Adunni stood in the center of the ballroom that had served as the stage for her final act of revenge. She'd gotten justice for the betrayal, protection for her sister, safety for her children, and control over her own destiny. The woman who had been discarded like expensive furniture had become the architect of her ex-husband's downfall. But more importantly, she'd learned that real power wasn't about money or connections or even revenge. Real power was about understanding your own worth and refusing to let anyone convince you that you were powerless. As she walked toward the exit, her phone chimed with a text from her daughters. "Mommy, we saw you on TV. You look like a queen." Adunni smiled, deleted the message, and stepped out into the Lagos night. Tomorrow, she would start building the life she deserved, not as someone's wife or ex-wife or victim, but as herself. The woman who had learned that sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to stay broken. Thank you for following this incredible journey of betrayal, discovery, and triumph. If this story kept you on the edge of your seat, hit that like button, subscribe for more amazing stories, and share this with someone who loves a good revenge plot. What was your favorite moment? Comment below. I love hearing from you. Don't forget to turn on notifications for Tales by Ben so you never miss our latest stories.